Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Hari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gauranga Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai
Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta on Astotar Sarshi Shivan Shila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta on Astotar Sarshi Shivan Shila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Shila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta on Astotar Sarshi Shivan Shila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Jagat Guru Nitya Lila Pravishta on Astotar Sarshi Shivan Shila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta on Paramahamsa Mahabhagavat Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Satyam Goswami Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Arupa Nuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Ananta Gauda Vaishnava Ring Ki Jai. Avirbhava Bhakti Pramod Puri Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Avirbhava Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj Goswami Ki Jai. Gauda Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Om Aginati Mirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshu Unmalitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tarale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Taravaktaya Namo Namaha Yam Pravajantamana Petyam Apetya Krityam Vaipaino Viraha Katara Ajunava Putre Titam Mayatayo Tarabhoginidustam Sarvabhutam Vidin Mulimanatosmi Anapita Chirin Chirat Kurunavardhino Kalo Samadapaitam Unnata Ujvala Rasam Svabhakti Shriyam Hari Purata Sundarata Dikatam Vasatipita Sudafidare Kundale Sparatu Sachinandanaha Bhaktiya Vihina Aparada Lakshay Shiptascha Karma Ritarangamadye Kripamai Tvam Sharanam Prapana Vrinde Namaste Charanarvindam Bhajami Radam Aravinda Mitram Smarami Radam Arvind Vadami Radam Karuna Bharadam Tato Malanasti Katyana Kapi Tapat Vasmi Tabai Vasmi Najiva Mitva Ivina Iti Vignaya Radhe Tamaya Mancharantika. I'm first of all offering millions and millions of Dhamma pranams and to Lotus feet of our most beloved Gurudev Nitya Leela Pravishta on Astotaras Rishi Shri Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And the same again millions and millions of times and to the Lotus feet of our beloved Nitya Leela Pravishta on Astotaras Rishi Shri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And unto Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Satchidananda Namani Gaura Shakti Svarabhaya Rupa Nugadvaita. And today in particular unto our most beloved Nitya Leela Pravishta on Astotaras Rishi Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Gaura Premanandi and all our Rupanuga Guru Vargya and all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, my Dandava pranams. Hare Krishna. So today is the um, appearance day, Avirbhava of Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Goswami Maharaj. So I'm going to say a small Pushpanjali before we begin our Jaiva Dharma. Srila Bhakti Bharati Maharaj has made it very clear that if we don't glorify these personalities on their appearance and disappearance days, then it definitely constitutes an offense. And we can appreciate that very much more and more, because each time an appearance or disappearance day comes, we try to remember to glorify them, and therefore imbibing the moods and qualities of so many different great Gaudiya Vaishnavas who have come in this mission of Srimati Radhika and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Rupa Goswami. So today the Avirbhava of Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Goswami Maharaj. And I'm just going to reiterate basically what Srila Bhakti Bharati Maharaj has presented. Something from there anyway, briefly. So Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Goswami Maharaj, he arrived at the Mutt in 1922, and he was initiated on the Janmashtami day of that year. He had just completed his university education, and he had been studying sciences, and then he changed to studying arts. And he arrived in the Mutt in 1922, as I said, and he was 24 years old at that time. And he took his Harinam and Diksha mantras together. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati awarded him both simultaneously on the Janmashtami of that 1922. And he awarded him the name Pravananda Brahmachari. This was his name. So immediately, because Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati knew that he was educated and he had the ability to write, etc., he made him the chief editor of his Dainya Nadia Prakash, a daily newspaper glorifying all the different conceptions of Krishna consciousness. So this was a huge task, and Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj, or Pranav Brahmachari at that time, Pranavananda, he requested Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, "Oh, you please tell me what you expect from me. What should I do? How can I complete this service?" And Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati said, "I will not give you any instructions on this service. The way forward will be indicated by Krishna within your heart. He will indicate to you exactly how to fulfill this desire of mine to have this daily newspaper printed and distributed." So it's really remarkable, because this personality, Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Goswami Maharaj, he maintained this service from this time, from 1922 until he departed this world in 1999, was when he disappeared. So how many years is that? It's something like 60 odd, almost 70 years. He didn't stop that service, because he had always appreciated my Guru Maharaj has given me this service directly. And he worked on many other publications simultaneously. He worked on a monthly Gaudiya Vani magazine. He worked on other harmonist publications, and he worked on various book editing work. He never stopped. His pen was never tired. And he was always performing these services in such a completely humble mentality that the devotees offered him so much respect and honor, but he wouldn't accept any of it. He understood that everything was manifesting, any talent or fruit of his efforts were all manifesting by the mercy of his Gurudev, fully, fully, fully. So there's many different amazing pastimes that Srila Bhakti Bharati Maharaj relates in his My Beloved Masters about Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj. There was one time when Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj had been gifted a mandir in Kalna. It was Ananta Vasudev temple, and he'd been asked to maintain that place, and he'd been given that temple to, I don't know how big that temple was or anything of that nature, but he'd been given a particular, and because at that time there was friction amongst all the other sannyasis of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. This was after the disappearance of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. So Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj wasn't going to get involved in all of that. So he remained in that temple in Kalna, performing seva to his deities, Gopinath, Radha Gopinath. And he was never trying in any way to put himself forward and make disciples. He never accepted disciples, I think, until maybe early 90s, something like that. A long time after all the other, his godbrothers had accepted that position of guru. He never would worship like that. If someone came to him and wanted him to accept them as a shishya of his, he would say, "Oh, you want to follow me? Come with me." And then he'd lead them to Srila Bhakti Rakshak Srila Maharaj, or he'd lead them to Srila Bhakti Bhagavan Keshav Maharaj. He would lead them to other people, but he wouldn't accept anyone as his disciple. He had that mood. So there was one time when Bhakti Dvaita Madhav Maharaj, the guru of Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharati Maharaj, requested Bhakti Vigyan Bharati Maharaj to go to Kalna because Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj, he wasn't a sannyasi at that time. He must have been Brahmananda Brahmachari, was requesting many different people to come to a festival celebrating the appearance of Narottam Das Thakur. This was actually in the month of January, February. And so Srila Bhaktivedanta Bharati Maharaj, he arrived at that temple, and there was about 6 or 7 other sannyasis that also arrived to celebrate this festival the next day. And Srila Bharati Maharaj was amazed that there seems to be no preparation going on. They've got a big festival, perhaps thousands of people are going to come, and no preparation has been made. And there's not even any cooking utensils, there's no flowers, there's no bhoga. So he went to Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj and he asked him humbly, he said, "What are your plans for tomorrow?" He said, "Oh, what plans?" He said, "Whatever is happening, Krishna is arranging everything." And then Srila Bhaktivedanta Bharati Maharaj said, "But tomorrow you have a big festival, many people are coming. There's no bhoga here, there's no flowers, there's no even cooking pots." And Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj was insistent that Krishna will arrange everything. So the next morning, the day of the festival, Srila Bhaktivedanta Bharati Maharaj became quite anxious because he'd been requested by his guru to assist Srila Pranav Ananda Brahmachari. And so he went again to Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj and asked him, he said, "Well, can you point me in the direction where I can get some cooking utensils at least?" And then Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj, he said, "Oh, you can go to the chief of the municipality. He has a storehouse with many different cooking utensils. You can go and ask him." So Bhakti Vigyan Bharati Maharaj goes to the door of this house, and he bangs on the door early in the morning, 7:30 something, and the man has only just woken up, very vague. But when Bhakti Vigyan Bharati Maharaj makes the request, then he sends a servant with a key to a particular room, and he tells the servant, "You give whatever utensils Srila Bharati Maharaj requires." So Srila Bharati Maharaj was able to get many cooking pots and the gas rings and the gas stoves, etc., and took all the equipment on rickshaws back to the temple and set everything up in preparation. But there was absolutely no bhoga at all. He describes there was perhaps half a kilo of rice and perhaps half a kilo of dal, and they were expecting thousands of people. The whole city of Kalna, it had been advertised of this festival happening today.
So Srila Bharati Maharaj was trying to remain very calm. He'd never actually cooked for large numbers himself, but he rolled his sleeves up and decided, yes, I will have to do this work because there's no one else to do it. And there was one experienced cook there who was going to assist him. So he put the largest pots filled with water on the stoves to at least have some boiling water. And then he sat back to wonder what he was going to do. And then very soon it seemed to happen as if by magic, people started to arrive with offerings of bhoga, of rice, of dal, of vegetables, of fruits, and so many different things. And Srila Bharati Maharaj was just completely astonished. He said, in the end, it was like a column of ants were approaching with bags of bhoga. And we were cooking so much preparation. And he said that the serving of all the feast began at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it ran right through till about 6 o'clock in the evening. That's how many people came. There were thousands of people. And he said at the end, there was enough bhoga in the kitchen to last the mutt for another full month. There was so much bhoga was brought. And then he went to Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj and was expressing his astonishment. And the same unconcern for what had taken place, Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj exhibited. He wasn't concerned about the festival, neither was he concerned about the extra bhoga being in the temple. He was just had a mood of total dedication to whatever Krishna wants is going to manifest. And Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharati Maharaj said he remembers this verse, Ananyas Chintayanto Mam Yeta Pasate Tesham Nitya Viyuktanam Yoga Kshema Vahamyaham. This beautiful verse from the 9th chapter in Bhagavad Gita saying, whatever is lacking, Krishna will provide, and whatever is there, Krishna will maintain. So this for Srila Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj, he'd never experienced that type of faith in Krishna's arrangements in his life until that time. He found this really amazing. But the overall mood of Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj consistently was that of his absolute dedicated humility. There was a time much later, I think in the early 90s, when the devotees wanted to celebrate Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj's appearance day, a celebration. They made all big preparations and everything arrangement for his birthday. And Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj wasn't coming down to attend, so the devotees came upstairs and said, you know, we've made all these arrangements and we want to honor you today. And Srila Pramod Maharaj says, how can you honor me? I am just the pet dog of my Gurudev. The only reason why you're honoring me is because my Gurudev has given me something. It's that, what he has given me, that you are honoring. So you should only honor me, only honor my Gurudev. I am just nothing. And he said it with such total conviction that there was no argument from the devotees. They couldn't argue because this was the heart. And he said, if you want to honor me, that nice Vyasasan you've made for me, you please place my Gurudev's picture on that Vyasasan and you make all your offerings to him, because he is the potency that I am worshipping, and this will make me most happy. But he wasn't just saying this. He was meaning this from the core of his heart. And when the devotees understood that, to make him happy on that day, they followed that request and they did exactly like that. And this was very amazing. There was another time also within the ISKCON society, there were some junior devotees, and they had commented in a class publicly that they considered, for some reason or other, that Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj was something of a Kanishta Bhakta. They had somehow or other concluded this. And the disciples became very, very unhappy when they heard this, and they ran to Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj to, reveal their hearts and express what had actually happened. And Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj became so happy. He said, I'm so happy that someone has accepted me even on this path as a bhakta, as a Kanishta Adhikar. That means I have some Adhikar. That means that I'm in that path of coming towards Krishna's bhakti. We cannot understand the depth of acts of humility of this nature. But this was the whole embodiment of Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj. Not only this exhibition constantly of his abject humility, but his continued seva. When Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati left, many of his disciples opened their own mats, but Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj, he wouldn't. And he would visit all the other mats and always engage in Harikatha and seva at the other mats, and always serve them and try to help them in whatever difficulties they had, and worship their deities, etc., and offer direction on archan, because he was so expert in his deity seva, absolutely expert. And at the same time, he was continuing these daily and weekly and monthly journals that he was publishing simultaneously. He never stopped. So we can imagine the kind of energy that he had from his devotion. He was only focused on pleasing his Gurudev and pleasing Radha and Krishna. He had nothing else, no other consideration in his heart at all. So this is so inspiring for the sadhaks today to appreciate. Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharati Maharaj, he declares that these types of devotees, they don't really exist anymore, you know, with such nishta. And there was another time when demonstrating his, because he was a very gentle man, and he would never confront and never speak harshly to the devotees at any time. But there was a time when he describes he was traveling with another devotee called Vishnu Prabhu on a train to Puri. And on the Howrah station, they were standing waiting for the train. There was quite a large crowd. And one very wealthy merchant, he came and began to blaspheme Vishnu Prabhu for some reason or some defect that he'd seen in his character. He began very strongly blaspheming this. And Vishnu Prabhu, he practically didn't even respond. He didn't say anything. He just stood and just took it. And then that same merchant, he came to Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj, who was standing looking very effulgent, like a great saintly person. And he wanted to give him a huge donation, a major donation. And Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj at that time said, "No, I cannot take any of your donation. You have just blasphemed a devotee from the Gaudiya Math. Your donations are totally contaminated. If I take your donation, I also will become contaminated." But this merchant, he just kept insisting and insisting and insisting and insisting. And Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj was as adamant as this devotee was insisting. And this merchant could not comprehend how someone would not take his money. This merchant, his whole life was just around making pounds, shillings, and pence. And here was someone who absolutely, at the core of his heart, didn't want it and was not going to accept it under any circumstances. So then that merchant just went away. Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharati Maharaj was there at this time and relates this story, and was saying that Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj was trying to intimate to this merchant, you please go to this Vishnu Prabhu and apologize to him. Otherwise you will carry this offense for life. And he never did. That wealthy merchant never did. He never went and apologized to that devotee. He just went away, left in the end. But this is an example of when Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj wanted to be absolutely rock solid, firm, and uncompromising in his principles, exactly as his Guru Maharaj was. His Guru Maharaj was uncompromising with establishing the truths of Siddhanta, etc. And this is what he would incorporate in all his writings. But there was another occasion at Puri when Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj was dancing at the Ratha Yatra with so many other of the senior Vaishnavas, and they had made the police had made a special cordon, so just the Gaudiya Math devotees could have their kirtan without being jostled and hassled by so many general people. So the kirtan was very much enlivened and very enthusiastic, and they were meditating on Kurukshetra pastimes, all of them. So that beautiful verse that Hayadina, I've forgotten the verse, that they were chanting in glorification of Radha and Krishna meeting at Kurukshetra. And they were all totally absorbed in this kirtan. And Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj had his shoulder bag slung around his neck, and he was dancing vigorously. And a pickpocket came and took his wallet while he was in this complete ecstatic state. And the younger devotees, they saw this and they caught the culprit and they took the wallet back. And they wanted to tell Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj about what had happened. And they kept pulling at his shirt. Look, wait, we want to tell you something important. And Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj would not listen to them, not listen. And finally he turned around very irritated, very angry. Said, why are you disturbing my kirtan? Yes, I understood. Someone has taken my wallet. Let him take everything. Let him take all the cloth of my back. I'm not in this time in this kirtan is most precious. It may never come again. Money will come again. Money is just always moving around. What is the problem? And then he stayed focused on the kirtan. And afterwards he told those devotees, because those devotees say, oh, but Maharaj, we know that you value every single paisa that's given to you. If you're given a single rupee, you always express this rupee is a prayer that I must offer the services of this rupee to Krishna directly, otherwise I am an offender. And let you quite happily let your whole wallet just go to this pickpocket. And Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj, he explained, there is the higher consideration. And the highest consideration is the performance of kirtan. If the kirtan is at the pitch that it was at that particular time, this is the priority. It may never happen again. But money will come again, and no problem like that. So you must understand the priority. So not everything is locked in concrete like that. So Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj was always teaching the very elemental lesson, absolutely beautiful lessons. And there was another time of his humility when Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharati Maharaj, we know that he came from a very Paka family of Brahmins. And he had never eaten in his life anything except, boiled rice? Boiled rice. He'd never eaten the bought rice from the packet. He'd never eaten this in his life. From childhood, he'd only eaten this boiled rice. It was considered really inferior to take rice from a packet. And he was sitting at a festival with Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj, and they served this packaged rice. And immediately, Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharati Maharaj could see, what am I going to do? How can I eat this rice? You know, I've never in my life eaten this rice. And then he looked across at Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj, who also was in a similar situation. But he smiled and he began eating the rice. So then Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharati Maharaj, he followed his example. And then he asked him afterwards, why did you take the rice? And he said, when something is offered to you with love and affection, and it's been offered to the Lord first, it is our duty to honor it. It is not our prerogative to sit back and not take that. So again, Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj was showing the example of humility in following the principle of honoring prasadam. There's another story like this when Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada was leaving this world. And he knew Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj came to offer his obeisances and beg forgiveness for any offenses that he'd done. And Prabhupada, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, was just begging also the same. And at that time, Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj, he said, is there anything you want me to do? I will do anything for you this time. And Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada said, yes, there is something. Because Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj had also come from a very Paka Brahminical line. And he'd never in his life eaten anything cooked by Westerners. Never in his life. And he knew that the Westerners were offering their bhoga to Krishna on the altar of Krishna Balaram. And he had never taken his own mouth anything from the West. And Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, he requested Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj that you take one of my ladus. And this was very tough, and he told Jamuna the cook, you go and bring one ladu. And they gave him a ladu, and he took it in front of Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. This is again an example of his humility, because the principles of the Brahman behavior are like caste from birth. It's not just often in this birth, it's probably many births. You've been placed in a Brahmin family. So these Brahminical standards are cast in stone. And to actually break these standards is inconceivable. But Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj, he did like that at that time. But I can remember I think it must have been 1994, when Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj produced this very beautiful book. It's called The Heart of Krishna. It was like a largish book, and it was filled with illustrations. A couple of artists had illustrated every single page, and it was all sayings about humility that had been dictated by Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj. And I can remember receiving this book and my heart just melting with it. It was as if Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj had advented in the form of that book. This was the first book he had published in the Western world, and it was only about humility. It's there, we can find it on Google in search there. The Heart of Krishna, it's called. Exceptionally beautiful book, will melt the heart completely. Very, very, very simple. Nothing complex, nothing high, just very simple examples of absolute humility. And I can remember personally on 2 or 3 occasions when Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj came to the Krishna Balaram Mandir. And he, at that time, was very bent. He couldn't sit straight because his whole life he'd been writing like this, and his back had become deformed and bent. And he was actually carried into the temple. And at that time in the Krishna Balaram temple, there was a tamal tree. And I think they have a new tamal tree now. The other one's gone. But anyway, he sat under that tamal tree and he spoke with the devotees. And he was such a senior Vaishnava at that time, disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and a guru of his own mutt at that time. But the way he presented himself to all these junior ISKCON devotees, me included, was with such a humble mood. He sat just on a mat and he was looking at the devotees and wanting to speak to different devotees because he could speak very good English, as well as Hindi and Bengali, of course. But he was looking to interact with different devotees. And his whole mood was nothing but like on a familiar level with all the devotees, even though he was such a senior personality. So this is the nature of the Mahabhagavat. And I can remember going to visit his room in Mayapur here a couple of times at the Gopinath Gaudiya Math. Once I went alone, and I can remember, even though he was very old and sort of trembling and infirm, he immediately acknowledged me as being a devotee. I mean, I was just a young devotee, but he was immediately giving me respect, you know? And when I went one time with my Gurudev used to love to take him books because Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj would love to receive new publications. He had such a belief in the Brihat Mridanga. This had become ingrained from the teachings of his Guru Maharaj. His Guru Maharaj had learned from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur the importance of educating the general people through book distribution. So my Gurudev would bring him different books, and Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj would relish the books. He would take the books from my Gurudev. I can remember this one occasion I went with him, and I think it was Shikshastikam that he took with him, and he looked at all the illustration, he opened it, he smelt it, the glue and everything, and he looked carefully through all the pages, and he really examined the book. And he was so pleased with Srila Narayan Maharaj for printing this book in the English language. And he also had some Hindi books to present to him too. But when I saw my Gurudev with him, Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj, who was so much senior to my Gurudev, would again have this such close, affectionate relationship with him. They had a very beautiful pastime when my Gurudev was not even a sannyas, and he was helping Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj in his bath at the Ganga. And at that time, Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj had a lota that he'd brought from his family house. In his family days, he'd had this lota for many, many years, from childhood, basically. And my Gurudev was bathing him because he was old then, bent his back. And somehow or other, by nature's providence, the lota slipped into the Ganga and went away, vanished. And Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj was not effective, but my Gurudev was very effective and tried very hard to retrieve the lota, and he just couldn't get it. But Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj was showing the depth of his detachment, even though this was his last attachment. And this is what he proclaimed to my Gurudev. He said, "You have helped me take away my very last family attachment." Because he'd probably had this lota for about 80 years of his life. So some attachment had come. Every single morning he would be, you know, taking bath with his lota. So my Gurudev and Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj would always, whenever they met, joke about this lota pastime with them. And both of them would laugh. Both of them would chuckle about it. And it was just such witnessing the beauty of his nature in relationship to my Gurudev. So there are so many stories and pastimes connected with. There's another pastime I'm just thinking that every day on the parikrama, Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharati Maharaj relates that his seva was to bring water for all the different sannyasis to take their bath during the parikrama, because they were just hand pumps, etc., and they were usually full of other people. So he'd bring the bucket of water for Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj. And then Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj would always take some drops and put it on his head. And Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharati Maharaj asked, why was he doing that? And he said, because it's been brought by a devotee of Krishna for the service of devotees. Therefore, it's transcendental water. So how can I not honor it? It's like in every single aspect of his life, he was honoring Krishna. He was a pure devotee and he loved Krishna absolutely, fully. And more than ever, he loved his Guru Maharaj totally, fully. This is why he couldn't be part of that whole breakdown of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's mutt. He couldn't even be involved in any of that. So we hear these amazing examples of these personalities, and we can take great inspiration, and we can pray at their lotus feet, today in particular, to please give us some inspiration by this divine personality to become at least, faithful to Sri Radha and Krishna, at least faithful to our Guru Maharaj, at least faithful to Mahaprabhu's conceptions, and follow this through carefully, and to follow the example of his continued seva in our lives. So there's many pastimes of Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj, but I want just to touch the Jaiva Dharma today because this is our topic. So Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Gold Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. So now we'll come to our Falshruti. We're on the last four, correct? Last four. Falshruti, 831 page. Jaiva Dhamma Pratishe Shuddha Bhakti Hoy. Jaiva Dhamma Padile Kabe Bhakti Noy.
One who reads Jaiva Dharma with faithful deliberation will surely attain Shuddha Bhakti. But one who does not read Jaiva Dharma can never attain Bhakti.
This is our desire, to read it with focused attention. This is what it means here, to read it with careful deliberation and concentration and with an undisturbed mind, and read it with a submissive mood, hoping to imbibe the teachings that basically Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Rupa Goswami are giving through this literature with great honor. And then these teachings will come in our heart. It's described also that if we glorify these personalities on the day of their appearance or disappearance day, their qualities can infuse us, because it's like an open window, direct connection with these personalities. So this quality of humility is foremost in Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj also. Rupa Noga Abhiman Pate Trita Hoy Jaiva Dharma Vimukake Dharma Hinekoi.
Faithfully reading Jaiva Dharma will surely strengthen one's Abhiman as a Rupanuga, follower of Sri Rupa Goswami. One who is averse to reading Jaiva Dharma is certainly devoid of religious principles.
Yes. Yavat Jivane Jai Pate Jaiva Dharma Jane Prita Jnana Karma.
One who faithfully reads Jaiva Dharma throughout his entire life will be endowed with bhakti and will surely realize the futility of dhyan and karma.
These words are Satya Sankalpa. They're the words of the Mahabhagavat, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. If we faithfully absorb this instruction, then the conclusion will be that we will attain the fruit of Shuddha Bhakti and give up this Gyan and Karma. Krishnera Ramala Seva Labhi Senara Seva Sukhe Magnaraha Sada Krishna Para.
Such a man, being fully devoted to Shri Radha Krishna Yugal Kishore and having attained their Amal Prema Seva, remains forever merged in the bliss of such immaculate loving service.
So we see in the life of Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj how he was absorbed fully in that Amal Prem Seva his whole life. His whole life. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, when he had taken that vow to chant, was it 10 billion names? Then he had the vision of the Panchatattva and he requested them, how will I get men and money to execute this mission? Because at that time, all he had was a piece of cloth. He had nothing, no resources. And Mahaprabhu said directly, I will send you men. So every time a new man came to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and started to exhibit exceptional qualities, and there were so many of them, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati would always comment, oh, my Mahaprabhu has sent me this man. And he certainly said this about Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj. He has sent him directly. And we see the caliber of this devotee to inspire, even today, that mood of humility, which is the very foundation of our practice. If we have that humility, then our practice will go forward. And without that humility, our practice will be in vain. So far in this chapter, we've begun to unpack the nature of bhav. And Bhakti Vinod Thakur is very generously describing the symptoms of bhav. And we've been through all the symptoms. We've also discussed who has the adhikar to achieve this state of consciousness. And he's also discussed about abhinivesh chabhav, about sadhana abhinivesh, by achieving bhav through our sadhana and the mercy of Krishna, and the bhav that is achieved by those prasad chav bhav, that those by the direct mercy of Krishna. So he's carefully illuminated that. And now he's been describing, to answer Brajanath's questions, about what is the duplicitous bhav that sometimes is exhibited by those very, very kanishta bhaktas, or not even bhaktas at all. And he's describing the pratibimba and chaya abhas of bhav. So this is basically where we've reached. So what page do you make it?
517.
Yes, 517. So the last thing we read was the beautiful verse here. We'll just read the translation. Yes, the last thing we were appreciating was that if we associate with devotees who desire liberation, then this transcendental bhav can never arise, because liberation, we said this verse, bhukti mukti spriha javat pischachi kriti vartate, that by these two witches of Maya, bhukti and mukti, then we are going to be hijacked from this path, without a doubt. And we should understand that this desire for liberation is very deep. And we talked yesterday, because even the reason why we come to devotional service is to be liberated from our suffering. Practically everyone comes for this reason, because they want to stop the suffering. Therefore, it's they want liberation. It's not that they come because they're hungry to serve Krishna. They don't even know Krishna, not properly. So we're learning, we're in process. But if we still hold on to that desire for liberation, even though we're hearing about these exalted topics, then we can never achieve the principle of this Amal Prem Seva. It can never be attained if the desire, because the desire for my own welfare is going to eclipse the principle of selfless service to Radha. And if we are Raga Anugas, following the Raga Atmikas, who are the gopis of Vrindavan, and we see their totally selfless moods, leaving everything in their families only to satisfy the calm of Krishna. Everything in their being just wants to please. They are all replicas of Sri Radhika. Every atom of Sri Radhika's being is only to bring pleasure to Krishna. She knows nothing else except bringing pleasure to Krishna. And all her manifestations, all her Kaya Vyuha, have exactly that same quality, just to bring pleasure to Krishna. And in all thousands and millions of different ways, through their different rasas with Krishna, each of those gopis has a different flavor, a different rasa with Krishna. We read this in Ujjvala Nirmani in particular, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur will describe it in the last 14 chapters. So this mood of uninterrupted, absolute focused, dedicated service to please Krishna is the principle which will manifest transcendental bhav in the sadhak. And this can be cultivated, and of course the mercy that we described initially, this sadhana abhinivesh chabhav, when the mercy will descend by our practice, we can hope for that. So this verse on page 517 is saying, just as the moon is never obscured by darkness, even though covered by black spots, similarly, a person exclusively devoted to Sri Hari remains glorious, though by appearance he may be wicked and depraved. So this is in context with if someone has achieved that stage of bhav and they're very careless about their social condition or their social behavior, etc. And many things, they're very callous towards the material energy. Someone may criticize that as being a fault, but we should be very cautious. If that person is actually very advanced internally, he doesn't need any respect from the external world. It's not what he's looking for. He's lost that desire for material reputation. So we should be very, very careful about, and it's saying the example of a moon being covered by darkness. The moon is never covered by darkness. It just appears from this point of view to be covered by darkness, but the moon itself is separate from the darkness. It's like the sun. So this is what this verse is referencing. So I'll continue reading for a little bit. It should not be concluded that this instruction, it should not be concluded from this instruction that a bhakta repeatedly engages in sinful activities. Yes, don't think that this gives some sort of allowance for us to behave sinfully. Once a bhakta has developed nishta in bhakti, he will have no inclination to sin further. However, as long as the material body exists, there is a chance that sinful activity will occur unexpectedly. So it can happen. We are in these material bodies till we leave these material bodies. That's the stage of Vastu Siddhi. We can recognize this stage of Swarup Siddhi. We can realize our internal identity. But until the stage of Vastu Siddhi, when we actually leave this body, it's like in the description of Bharat Maharaj. If we read when he was at Fulara Ashram as Bharat Maharaj, and he'd completely given up all contact with material activity entirely. And it's described in one verse how he was worshipping Lord Narayan in the sun. That was his Ishtadev. And in one verse it's described that he's weeping tears. His hairs are standing on end in horripilation. So he's in a stage of bhav. He's in the stage of bhav. But then he falls down due to his sympathy and compassion for a deer that was born right in front of him and getting swept away by the current of the river, and he saved the deer's life. And then he started to nurture that deer, but that deer completely distracted him from his bhajan, and eventually that protection of that deer took over his whole mind. And then he left his body, Bharat Maharaj, only thinking of that deer. So he took birth as a deer in his next life. Then in the next life, he takes birth as a Brahman, but he decides to make himself appear completely dull, so he doesn't have to interact and become influenced by anything material at all. And then in this birth, there's the beautiful exchange that he has with the king, Rahugana. So this is the pastime described in the fifth canto. But he was in the stage of bhav before he had to fall and take those two births. So this is an example of how you can fall from this high condition. Once a bhakta has developed nishta in bhakti, he will have no inclination to sin further. However, as long as the material body exists, there is a chance that sinful activity will occur unexpectedly. If a bhakta is exclusively devoted, the influence of his bhajan immediately burns to ashes all kinds of sins, just as a blazing fire easily consumes a small heap of cotton, and he becomes cautious not to become victimized by any sinful activity again. All kinds of sinful actions are dissipated at the stage of steady, uninterrupted Ananya Bhakti. So it may be clearly understood that those who repeatedly engage in sinful activities have not yet developed this type of bhakti. To engage repeatedly and knowingly in sinful activity while practicing bhakti yoga is nam aparad, which uproots bhakti completely and casts it aside. Bhaktas therefore keep themselves distant from such offenses. Rati is by nature restless, asanti, warm, vigorous, and blissful, because it is perpetually full of increasing spiritual longing, abhilas. Although it produces warmth in the form of sanchari bhav, it is more cooling than millions of moons, and it tastes as sweet as nectar. So we'll stop there, but we'll just have a little taste of this Jaiva Dharma for today. But this Bhav Bhakti topic is a glorious topic that we need to be constantly remembering. At the moment, we're understanding the parameters of bhakti, or understanding the symptoms of bhakti, bhav rather. We're understanding how this is there, and it's giving us some focus for the future when we are doing our regular sadhana. So all of these indications are supporting our attention to focusing on bhav bhakti as the supreme goal at this stage. Of course, prem bhakti will manifest perhaps in another birth, or certainly in another birth. But we must be focusing on this Bhav Bhakti. So we're coming to learn something of Bhav Bhakti by hearing these descriptions. What is the tattva of Bhav Bhakti? Okay, so we'll discuss further tomorrow. Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai, Ananta Kota Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Jaiva Dharma ki jai, Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhu Cha, Patitanam Pavnibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaha.